All right, before we get started with today's video, I have sort of an exciting announcement. Moving forward, my channel is now officially affiliated with Dragon Shield. And the reason that I messaged them to see if they wanted to become affiliated with my channel is because I've been using their stuff for years. So here's a fun little anecdote. When I was in grad school, I made these decks that were commons and uncommons, and I did it for each guild pairing so that new players could like come up to me at the Magic Club that existed at the University of Maryland and just kind of jam some games, even if they didn't have cards. Well, as you saw, those are all sleeved in dragon shields, and uh, 13 question mark years later, those sleeves are still in playable condition. So anytime I want to sleeve up something and I know that it needs to last, especially like my commander decks and stuff, I do personally use dragon shields. So they have sent me a whole bunch of product. I'll be doing some giveaways both in person and virtually over the next few weeks. And they did send me a whole bunch of really cool swag. Like this player companion for D&D that's like a dice box, and it can like hold your tablet and stuff. It's super cool. I posted a short about it if you want to check it out. So if you find yourselves in need of sleeves or other role-playing or magic accessories, consider checking out Dragon Shield. I have a link to their website below. Full disclosure, promo code ThrabenU will save you a little bit on your order while giving me a kickback and supporting my channel. All right, with that announcement out of the way, let's go play some Magic, huh? Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. And today, we're going to be playing with a card that says that it's 6 foot tall in its bio, but it's actually like 5'7". And that is Wight of the Reliquary. This card has promised me the fucking world, and every time that I have played it, it has been mediocre at best. And I expected this card to be quite good when I was looking at Modern Horizons 3 spoilers, but it has come up short every time so far. But this time will be different, right? Insert all the YouTube comments that are like, it's not going to be different, Phil. If this card is going to work, Michael's DredgeVine deck here might be the place for it. So in case you're not familiar with the overall strategy, the idea is to use cards like Stitcher's Supplier to fill your graveyard and then bring back cards to play, such as your Bloodghast, which just require landfall, or your Vengevines, which require you casting 2 creature cards this turn. And as you fuel your graveyard, you give yourself fuel for Reanimate, as well as fuel for Hogaak, which is a powerful finisher that is quite difficult to block. Now, within the context of this shell specifically, you can activate Wight of the Reliquary, sacrificing a Bloodghast, fetch a land to play, immediately return the Bloodghast, and then every turn for the rest of the game, you can just do that combo. Note that this creature also has Vigilance, so you can attack too while this is happening. We do have lots of creatures that want to come back from the graveyard, and an interesting removal spell here, Flare of Malice. At 4 mana, it's not great, but what if it was free? You can sacrifice a non-token black creature rather than pay its mana cost to have each opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So this is an edict that is difficult to protect from. So your Murktide Regents can't be protected by like an unflipped Delver or something like that. So that's pretty cool. And this has another Modern Horizons card that I haven't played with at all, Grist Voracious Larva. This is a 1/2 Death Toucher. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it enters from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you can pay green. If you do, you turn it into the Planeswalker. It pluses for a green-black insect token and mill 2 cards. A black card gets milled, it gets a Death Touch counter. You can disenchant for a -2, and for -6, for each creature card in your graveyard, you make a token copy of it that's a 1/1. So The flip creatures like Ajani and Tamiyo have been seeing a pretty respectable amount of constructed play. I was expecting to see a lot more Grist. Maybe it's good. We'll find out today. I did not touch Michael's main deck at all. I wonder if the deck really gets away with 3 copies of Wasteland when you want green, black, and black, black on turn 2. 17 lands is like a little rough. Like your curve in theory maxes out at 2, but I'm going to have to be very cognizant of mulliganing into Oblivion with this deck. I didn't touch the main deck. The sideboard I adjusted slightly. Originally, I think there were 4 Force of Vigors, 3 Pick Your Poisons. I added some Abrupt Decays into the mix. I just wanted an uncounterable fuck you to Psychic Frog. That is just something that I wanted to have access to. And the Thoughtseizes weren't originally in the deck list. I wanted to add those in. Flare of Malice and to a lesser extent Witherbloom Command are not particularly potent cards versus combo decks. So at minimum, I wanted to have 3 reasonable cards to board in versus a generic combo deck in times where these weren't good. And so I figured Thoughtseize, a land of some kind would probably work that out. Like maybe I should squeeze 1 more generic anti-combo card in here. Maybe one of these endurances should become a surgical. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Because then I always have 3 generic cards to board in versus combo. Because, if your opponent is on, Show and Tells, Infernal Tutors, Burning Wishes, whatever, extracting those tends to be potent. Yeah, that feels right. And then with that, we actually have a pretty good amount of graveyard hate here, considering that Wight of the Reliquary can be tutorable access to Bojuka Bog at instant speed. So yeah, let's see how this one plays out. Should you find that you need cards, consider checking out toamagic.com. You always get free shipping with them. They have 95% of standard stuff in stock at any given time. And promo code ThrabenU saves you 5% on your order, whether you're ordering good cards or glorious jank. All right, Wight of the Reliquary. Last chance, bud. Let's battle. Okay, unfortunately, my first hand, immediately just proves me right about, the Wastelands being a little bit greedy in terms of casting spells on curve. But hopefully I'll just, Stitcher Supplier into Stitcher Supplier and do something broken, and it won't matter. Oh, we got Bloodghast and Vengevine in yard. All right. We can't trigger Vengevine on turn 2 because this Wasteland is not a black pip to play both of these spells. All right, we are under the gun immediately from Eldrazi. But this Wasteland is absolutely gonna just fuck. So that's real good here. There are 2 Vengevines in graveyard. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Then I will Wasteland my opponent's Eye of Ugin. I will crash in for 1 point of damage. It's gonna be really hard to get those Vengevines out of graveyard. And my opponent probably doesn't have a good 2-mana play. Well, I mean, that's a way to get him out of graveyard. Is Satyr Wayfinder better fishing for Hogaak? I don't think so. I think I just take the immediate damage. The creature does have haste. So let's just smack my opponent in the face of their Ancient Tomb. What I don't want to see is immediate Eye of Ugin. That's definitely spooky for me. Fleshraker is fine. My opponent is now in the range where Bloodghasts are hasty. I can't cast 2 creatures. So I can cast a Wight of the Reliquary if I want to set up obliterating my opponent's lands. If I play another Bloodghast and my opponent blocks a Stitcher Supplier, they take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They have to block a Bloodghast or Vengevine. So I probably just go in on that route. Get a Bayou. Cast a Bloodghast. Send in. And every point of damage here is making this Ancient Tomb just worse and worse. This is really feels bad trade for my opponent here. Yeah, so they're just going to soak up more damage. So this means that they can tap the Ancient Tomb, but I'm not really sure how they can pull out this game. It has to involve Eye of Ugin and another Glaring Fleshraker, I think. Okay, yeah, that's the start. There's one colorless left. Hey, that's a lot of bodies. So that's 13 when this is all said and done, but my opponent does not have 5 bodies. They have to keep casting colorless spells. That'll do. There's an Eldrazi Temple, so my opponent can keep going. I hope I just don't die. I think death is possible if my opponent just has the perfects here. Oh my god. There is a Wasteland. I take a gajillion D damage. I am at 1 because my opponent had a triple Glaring Fleshraker, double Eye of Ugin draw. And now my opponent has enough blockers that my combat step is invalidated. That sucks. I Reanimate is a dead card. My attacks are bad. I can't cast 2 spells. I'm dead to any colorless spell. I do not believe that I'm going to lose this game. So the only way I win is my opponent has nothing left, and they don't realize that 3 of my creatures can't block. Because I'm dead on board. Can't block, can't block, can't block. So, do you have literally nothing, opponent? Seems like no. Oblivion Sower? Why? Okay. So Abrupt Decay is good. That's about the only thing that I would board in here. Witherbloom Command is a way to recur Wastelands, but otherwise is a pretty weak card in this matchup. I'm going to treat this as removal spell for removal spell and just call that okay. So here's that single land issue that I was talking about. I can put 3 cards into graveyard and grief my opponent. Probably grief pitching Bloodghast. I don't have the second land to get back Vengevines by playing Gravecrawler. I don't have enough fuel to play a Hogaak. I don't think this one wins. My last one didn't win for that matter. This is a fine 6-card hand, so we'll grief, pitch grief, reanimate grief, do that thing, hope to spike a green land to start working towards Hogaak. This also has the single land problem, but I don't think I get to give up the grief reanimate start here. My opponent has a couple of very critical cards. Oh, my opponent's hand is not great, actually. So I take Fairy as a starting point. That way I can actually reanimate the grief. No, I'm not reanimating the Fairy. Magic Online. Go home. You're drunk. And now I actually have to think a little bit. So, the cage is annoying. It doesn't do anything right now. I really wish that my opponent didn't have the Fairy, so I could just reanimate their 6/6 and go to town that way, but we're not living in that timeline. My grief can't solo this game because of the Maze of Ith, so I think I need to keep the graveyard unlocked. But I don't think I'm winning this game. What went to exile? Glaring Fleshraker, I guess because my opponent did not have actual colorless mana to cast it. Yeah, so this is frustrating. So I am getting no damage in and playing no cards. So at this point, I expect that my opponent just has the inevitability that beats me. If I draw a green source as my next draw, I think I'm still competitive in this game. That's not great for me. Note that this does tap for mana. That is not the land that I am looking for. It's the land that I'm getting. The Weakened Bloodghast. Again, I am not getting any points of damage in. And my opponent gets to cast Sowing Mycospawn next turn, get a Wasteland, Wasteland my Urborg. Or if they don't think they need to Wasteland me, they can just get a Soul Land and make it so that like the Kozilek's commands and the Devourer of Destinies are closer to being online. Either way, I think the game's over. All right, here we go. And they are going for the Soul Land. Well, Stitcher Supplier is quite good. Get that going. Mill 3. There is a Hogaak. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can cast this Hogaak. My opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The issue is that if I put that Hogaak into play, it just eats it to Devourer of Destiny. So I probably don't do that. And by not doing that, my opponent will just have the opportunity to Kozilek's command, exile my graveyard. So Life's bad, basically. All right. Here we go. It is another Eye of Ugin. My opponent is using the Devourer of Destiny to take out the Stitcher's Supplier. And choosing to leave up Maze of Ith, which kind of seems irrelevant to me. I think I would have saved this for a future turn. Like, I don't think this 3 points of damage matters when you are attacking for 9. That is uncastable. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My Hogaaks are uncastable. At this point, I think I'm just going to throw in the towel. My opponent's got me. I can't cast my spells. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists, and they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out. So here we see the Wastelands being greedy again. My spells are not castable. Even if my spells were castable, this is a pretty weak hand that I would probably just mulligan anyway. There's no lands. This is the 5. I have no castable cards. This is my 4. My 4 is not playable. Yes, we'll keep this. It is a self-contained engine in 4 cards that has the possibility of lucking into a surveilled card. Concede. Dead. GG's. I don't beat that. All right. So, and... Fucking Wasteland. God damn it. Okay. Eldrazi again? All right, it is Eldrazi again. We've already figured out that this matchup is pretty tough. But my opponent has played a Chalice of the Void instead of Wastelanding me. So maybe we win. So I need to put Wight of the Reliquary into play. And then next turn, I can hopefully do some cool Bloodghast things. Scariest land here is Eye of Ugin. My opponent did not have. Blast Zone is uncommon. Sure, that's fine. So this one is a 3/3 ETB, and dies make a spawn. So since my opponent didn't wasteland me, I get to do cool things. So if I sacrifice this, this is a 3/3. I don't want to offer this trade, so I'm going to go ahead and just do this now. So I will sacrifice Bloodghast, get a Wasteland. Wasteland triggers Bloodghast. This land enters tapped? Fuck, I shouldn't have done that now then. That's awkward. I don't... No, I do want to make... Do I have another Surveil land? Don't have another Surveil land. I'm not going to make this land drop. Yeah, it speaks to the power of Wight of the Reliquary that I did not know that the land enters tapped, because I have like never successfully activated it in all the leagues that I've played it. 17. It is another cavern. That is a Kozilek's command exiling my Wight. Sure. If I draw a land, I'm punished for not playing Misty. I did not. However, my Reanimate currently has no text. I'm in this awkward position where like I desperately want to wasteland my opponent to keep them off of big things, but if I don't grief, my opponent can do a smaller thing, which is also probably horrific. So, thanks, I hate it. If Vengevine was a black card, we could grief. I guess the Reanimate is offline because of Chalice anyway. Yeah, this is the sort of thing that I was afraid of. How close is my opponent to Devourer of Destiny? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not next turn. I think I'm more scared of Glaring Fleshraker than anything else here. I'm going to get hit in the face for 3. I don't think I am blocking. And then I'm going to eat a Thought-Knot Seer. I'm going to lose this Vengevine. And probably end up with the Devourer of Destiny in play within 1 to 2 turns after that. I'm not literally dead, but this is pretty bad. I did not get wastelanded. I drew another Reanimate. Uh, concede? I'm just dead. It's just a matter of time. Like, Bloodghast can't block. Grief is not a good defensive card. I have 2 dead cards in hand. My opponent has outramped me. A bunch of my top decks are invalid. Yeah, I'm throwing in the towel. Like, I can wasteland to set my opponent back on mana. I'm still just taking 7 or taking 4 while making a negative trade that leaves me with a creature that is not offensively relevant. This one's done. So I think I brought in Abrupt Decays before as the only thing that I was doing. Sub them for Witherbloom commands before. I think I'm going to stand by that decision. So I have lands and spells. I would love for my opponent to reveal Devourer of Destiny from their opening hand. I Cabal Therapy that and just reanimate it on turn 1. I'm going to try to play towards that line. Fool. Fetch. We'll grab Bayou and Cabal Therapy my opponent. Will guaranteed hit the Devourer of Destiny that they revealed. Soul Guide Lantern. That exiles each opponent's graveyard. That is very notably awkward here with what I intend on doing. Now my opponent does still get the Devourer of Destiny trigger. My opponent exiles some lands and a fairy. Okay, so my opponent just messed up. So the ETB trigger lets them exile target card from a graveyard, and they did not exile their own monster. So I'm going to play Stitcher Supplier first to see if I hit a Bloodghast. Ooh. So that is a Cabal Therapy that my opponent can't disrupt in terms of priority passes. Yes. It's a little awkward to lean in further. I'm going to say it's okay, though. I will take your Sowing Mycospawn. There is a Bloodghast. So I don't think there's any reason to crack the Soul Guide Lantern there. Like, if I put a land into play, the Bloodghast triggers... Or no, a fetch land specifically gets around that. No, okay, no, that's fine. We'll name my opponent's Sowing Mycospawn. They've got an Eldrazi Purposer... an Eldrazi Repurposer left over. I grab a Bayou. This is a cast trigger. So I will just put a giant monster into play. Now, somewhat awkwardly, my opponent could get the bounce Eldrazi and bounce this to hand. I'm blanking on the name at the moment. Battle... Woozy what's it? So let's start here. I'll put a swamp into my hand. Grist's not quite working out. So I'll swing for 6. My opponent presumably blocks with one of these. If they just block with the Eldrazi Repurposer, they can get another spawn. By the way, I figured out how to shut off the whirling summoning sickness thing. I did remember. It just took me forever. So we'll get our next Bayou and put a Grist into play. And then pass the turn. So there's Cavern of Souls, 1 unknown card in hand. And we can potentially turn this into a Planeswalker. My dude just death touches. How do I feel about that? Gives my opponent a spawn. Feels like my life total is relevant. Okay. So they get a spawn. There's the cavern that we know about. Sowing Mycospawn. Getting a Cradle. And then passing the turn. Sure. I'll attack first. Send in. Opponent goes to 8, so they need their spawns. Given that, I will cast a Bloodghast. Cabal Therapy, target you. Sacrifice Bloodghast. We want to name something big. So my opponent had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if they have something relevant, it is larger than 7. Or no, sorry. 3, 4, 5, 6. No, so Devourer of Destiny is the name. It is just Ancient Tomb. That's fine. So do this. Return Bloodghast. Yes. Reanimate. Target a Grist. Grist triggers itself here. I will pay green, turn it into this backside, and then plus to mill. I get a Death Touch token. There's Vengevine in graveyard. Cool. So now I just need to beat my opponent's top decks or beat Eye of Ugin. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Eye of Ugin is activatable. Hogaak is cool. Let's just immediately plus here. No fun things in graveyard. I want to pressure my opponent's life total as much as possible. Bloodghast and the Satyr Wayfinder don't have good attacks. So I attack with these two and then Hogaak. Wastecape Battle Mage is the name of the bouncer. There we go. Yeah, so send in those two. Okay, my opponent is going to soak up some damage. So they'll tap Cradle to search now. Yeah, they don't want to sacrifice that spawn. They want to activate with Ancient Tomb. So there's 7. That is a Glaring Fleshraker, which is not bad unless my opponent also likes something good. So there's my Hogaak. I'm at 9. I could just die to Glaring Fleshraker activations if my opponent draws something like Kozilek's Command to support it. That's more mana. That's a card that does not trigger Glaring Fleshraker. What's the last card? It is Kozilek's Command for X equals 5. So I take 5 direct damage. And my opponent topped 2 cards, so I assume that I'm just dead. I guess an Eye of Ugin activation just does it, right? Yeah, so cast another Glaring Fleshraker. So that's 2 damage, putting me to 1. And whatever this last card is kills me. Well, that's pretty disappointing. GG's. Alright, my opponent has kept on 6 cards. Not Eldrazi. I think I don't want to be wastelanded off this Bayou, so I think I am going to start on Urborg. Hello, Moto. There we go. And then Stitcher Supplier. No goodies in the graveyard. Ah, fuck. I mean, this is not surprising. We're in a, like, 2.5 deck metagame, right? It's Blue, Black, Riskaminator, and Eldrazi as the only things that are really super viable, with Grixis Delver being number 3 beyond that. Okay, I sacrifice Stitcher's Supplier, I discard a Bloodghast, and I see if we can do something more unfair than turn 2 Archon of Cruelty on the play. Probably not, right? I physically cannot answer Archon of Cruelty outside of Flare of Malice. I have not drawn a single one of those ever. So let's Stitcher Supplier, see if we can hit another Bloodghast. Negative. I think I will Cabal Therapy immediately. Sacrifice this. Mill my 3. Cabal Therapy gets Force of Willed. I was going to name Force of Will a Vengevine. So I cast Stitcher Supplier this turn. So, play Bayou. Return Bloodghast. Cast Grist. Trigger Vengevine. Yes. This is a pretty good turn 2 for me, but I just die in 2-ish turns to this anyway. Like, this can attack, but not relevantly. I can transform Grist next turn, but that doesn't really matter. So, Archon, I sacrifice Bloodghast. I discard Cabal Therapy. I effectively take 8 damage this turn. My opponent is gaining 3 life, which undoes most of my combat step. And if they follow it up with something like a Psychic Frog, my creatures also just can't attack. Okay, no follow-up play. So, my plan now is Witherbloom Command the Animate Dead around days. I think there's a good chance my opponent has a second Force of Will if they were willing to Force of Will a Cabal Therapy. It's possible they'd have a second Brainstorm instead. If I Stitcher Supplier into Cabal Therapy, I'm not playing around days anymore. So I can Cabal Therapy sacrifice an onboard creature to play around both days and Force of Will. That gives up my Grist. Is that fine? I'm going to hope that that's fine. I'm going to do it pre-combat because I don't want to lose Grist to something like a Bowmasters. Wait, I have a Bloodghast. Do it with that. I cannot pay that right now and Witherbloom command. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I wasn't going to do that anyway. No. So Cabal Therapy, target you, sacrifice Bloodghast, name Force of Will. Second Force of Will called, but there's another fucking Animate dead. Ah! So Witherbloom command is still the plan, but it just changes a little bit. It becomes Wasteland, blow up a land. I guess it should have been this. Cast Witherbloom command, destroy this, mill 3. So target me, destroy that. Green and black. Return the Wasteland. Yeah, it's supposed to be Flooded Strand, so I can always Wasteland 2 turns in a row. Bash in for 4. And we'll see where this goes. The mistake that I made just now was pretty big. Opponent Troll Cycles, gets a basic. Opponent messed up. They fetch basic island. I can't do what I am about to do. So, cast Stitcher Supplier. Mill some cards. Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to cast this. And then I Wasteland. I trigger the Bloodghast. Yes. Trigger Grist. Not going to care about that. Wastelanding is just more important. Wasteland the Flooded Strand. Cast a Hogaak. We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Trigger Grist, but again, that's not what our mana is being used for right now. Send in. All right, I think I salvaged this game. My opponent can still top deck a land and animate dead. They didn't. Getting that Force of Will read was super important. My opponent concedes the match. I guess we take those. All right. This hand has no potential. It just does not do anything. So we need to mulligan. Well, this is what we're stuck with. How many fetchables are in my deck? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Having 2 of them in hand is not a problem. I think I'll just put 1 fetch land back into the deck. Fetch lands are, in theory, good. Opponents going to 5. They said with these mulligans, it'll be rough. Finishing my thought here, with Wight of the Reliquary, in theory, we should already have Bloodghast fuel for quite some time, so hopefully I'm not actually worried about that. The plan is Misty into Surveil Land, into Wight, into Bloodghast, plus Wasteland. And my opponent does ultimately keep the 5-card hand. Ah, it's Eldrazi again. Sure. So in good news, this doesn't produce colorless mana on turn 1, so that means I do have the opportunity to Wasteland my opponent before they get going with their stuff. No. Unfortunately, Wastelanding my opponent means that I'm not making a proactive play unless I happen to draw a 1-drop, which I did get a little lucky and do. So in my Legacy is Broken video that I released on Friday, I talked about how I really wanted to know whether, like, Psychic Frog and the current Eldrazi deck, like, I want to know if those are acceptable by current Legacy standards, and it is just so hard to tell that without Grief in the, like, while Grief is still in the format, basically any testing that we do right now is just totally irrelevant. So we're kind of in this, like, very awkward lame duck period. Man, this land does not enter untapped. This is some shit. So another Eye of Ugin is the Nightmare card here. Okay, it is just a regular land. Holy shit, we got lucky. So I can attack. It's just a little weird. So I have 3 things in graveyard. I will stay at 3 things in graveyard. 6 is not Hogaak, yeah. So send it, send it. No blocks for my opponent. I play this now despite having a Bloodghast, which is a little weird. So then I activate this, get my tapped land, trigger Bloodghast to come back, trigger Grist, pay green. Now we +2. There's a Cabal Therapy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hogaak. I think casting Hogaak is better than casting Cabal Therapy. We'll see if I'm wrong. I can just die. The heights of what the Eldrazi deck are capable of are kind of nuts. But this is my opponent's turn. If they don't have a big turn here, I'm going to have like Wasteland plus Reanimate plus Hogaak. The Grist is not irrelevant, but is not super strong. And my opponent is on a Volta 5. We have gotten the O snap in chat. That bodes well. Okay, if the Cradle is being tapped now, this is just going to be something like a Thought-Knot Seer, and that's like perfectly fine. There's a Sowing Mycos spawn. So I'll end up at 17. My opponent can fetch up like a Wasteland, get an Eye of Ugin. Their Wasteland probably doesn't matter that much. Like their Wasteland gets my Wasteland. Alright, they are going for the Wasteland. So they Wasteland my Wasteland to protect their lands. But I do end at 17. So I will Grist and plus. I'd like to hit something to reanimate. Negative. So Wight of the Reliquary just doesn't matter. Right? It's going to be a 3-3 if I need it to be a 3-3. Alright. Send everything on in. Hogaak has Trample. Tramply Bamply. So, sacrifice Bloodghast. I will get a Wasteland. I will not trigger Bloodghast and return it to play. We'll trade these. My opponent will take 7. Going to 9. I take some bodies out of play for the purposes of Cradle. I landfall, bring back Bloodghast. I believe it is correct to take 2 damage to get my Wight back. Alright, we're in play. I've done all my stuff. Pass the turn. Opponent needs a miracle. And they do not get it. Second verse, same as the first. Those in, those out. I'm not drawn a single copy of Flare of Malice this entire league. I don't even think I've milled one. Card does not exist in my deck. Alright, this time my opponent's keeping their 7. I can grief my opponent, pitching a Bloodghast. And then Cabal Therapy them, take a second card from their hand. After that, I play a Grist on the following turn, maybe miss a land drop. This whole Wight Bloodghast thing is so slow. I think I just keep this. Like, the Eldrazi deck is often such where if you can come in early and disrupt either their mana production or, like, take 2-ish cards from their... Never mind. Plans changed a bit. Now it's Grief, pitch Cabal Therapy. Well, their hand's not very good. That's the good news. If I hit a second land, I do not care about what they are doing. So... do I care more about the It That Heralds the End or the Repurposer? This one deals more damage right now. This one is scarier if Glaring Fleshraker comes in. This is an immediate damage burst, which could cause my opponent to pull further ahead. Mana's not a bottleneck for them, though. I'm going to take the thing that makes their other stuff better in combat. And then I'll pass the turn here. My Surveil land needs to do some work. I don't think I Grief Bloodghast to stop a 3-3 from happening. Like, I think I'm just going to keep these as castable cards. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to Surveil land now, lazily. Hogaak can go to yard. Miss on the next land. So, do I want to cast things to put cards into the graveyard for Hogaak? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it countered. It's possible I should grief that turn. Griefing that turn isn't stopping a 7 that gets stuck in my opponent's hand ever. So I think I grief this turn. Cool. One Bloodghast is fine. I think 1 Bloodghast is fine. I will grief, pitch Bloodghast. If we get a 7-drop out of my opponent's hand, they could just have a Kozilek's command that they are about to cast. Oops, all lands. That's fine. So then Bayou into Wight. Excluding the Hogaak, I have 4 cards in there. This Wight of the Reliquary is also large for the first time in this entire league. It's going to be land pass. I have to keep in mind that like Ayavugan does just threaten to activate. So yaw. Send in my giant creature. My opponent can block with Eldrazi Repurposer and just convert into a spawn, which seems perfectly fine. And then I'll pass the turn with the ability to get a Wasteland for Ayavugan available. And they did not have another Ayavugan. They just played Eldrazi Temple. There's the Courtyard. It is a Glaring Fleshraker. I think my opponent accidentally overpaid for that, for getting Ayavugan. So this is actually really good for me. I sacrifice Bloodghast, get a Wasteland, return Bloodghast, and then I can get rid of this Ayavugan before my opponent can start activating it, which is obviously quite good. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess this Bloodghast can attack 2. So send both. I guess I could have cast Grist pre-combat for 1 more damage. Okay, doesn't matter this time. Ooh. Oh, sure. I can activate this later. I'm fine with this. I think I'm fine with this. Pass turn. But this doesn't have any form of evasion, which is sort of unfortunate. I maybe need to think about taking a turn off from this whole Wight of the Reliquary thing, which isn't actually that impactful, to just put the Hogaak into play. That shrinks the Wight. It's awkward. Like, this is just not as good as you might think it would be on paper. Like, the land enters tapped, it's slow, there's no evasion attached to this. My opponent draw Fireball. I imagine that's the only reason why they would be tapping Ancient Tomb. Yeah, my opponent drew Fireball. That's 7 direct damage to me. Scry 7, draw a card. I wonder if it was correct for them to remove this. I am unsure. My guess is that it is not correct for them to remove it, because their dream is to just get into another Glaring Fleshraker or another Kozilek's command and just kill me. Alright, 3 of the cards went on top. That's 6 mana. Or 7. Must have miscounted, sure. But now they're taking that out. I'll do this whole thing one more time. It's just like not gonna matter though. Like, I can get another Wasteland, return this. But my opponent is currently winning combat. I can't remove their giant creatures. And I am also just potentially dead to the card that is currently on top of their deck beyond that. Yeah, my creature doesn't block, so I am at 4. Sure. So I play new Wight of the Reliquary. I cast a Hogaak. I'll leave the Death Toucher in graveyard, I guess. I could have Wastelanded first to leave 2 creatures in graveyard for the purposes of this. That was bad on my end. I don't think it matters. I believe that I am just dead. But I did have a strictly better play that I did not take. Oh, that's really good. That like keeps these as relevant mana producers. My opponent is casting a Sowing Mycospawn. They are not kicking it. If they kick it, they can exile one of my 2 lands. So why are we not kicking it? Sure. No, you're not kicking it because it doesn't matter. I just die because I have a single blocker after those triggers resolve. That's disappointing. Yeah, like, what my deck is trying to do is just not powerful enough to keep up with this Eldrazi deck. I still have not drawn a single copy of Flare of Malice, which is wild. And again, I believe I have not milled one either. Could play some Thoughtseizes. Don't think I am going to, but I could. Turn 1 Grist, turn 2 Satyr Wayfinder. Or more realistically, turn 1 Grist, turn 2 Wasteland, attack for 1. Work towards an 8/8. I guess this is fine. It's just not exciting. I don't believe I have a Basic Forest in my deck. Basic Forest is currently Bayou. Well, that's a slight exaggeration because I'm going to Wasteland immediately, but you get the idea. Alright. My opponent mulliganed once. Yes, I do not have Basic Forest. We will play Grist. Pass turn. The good thing about the Eldrazi deck is that it does not have as... Oh, that's annoying. It does not have as much fast mana. So sometimes you get a turn to wasteland them or otherwise disrupt them before they start doing their thing with their soul lands. This is a very annoying land for us very specifically right now. I think I need to try to do something a little bit unfair here. If I say no, there are 5 cards in graveyard. If I if I wasteland 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's still 5 cards in graveyard. And I can Hogaak, so I can successfully put a land in my hand. Misty seems fine. Pass turn. So I think we're going to be okay unless a Lotus Petal gets involved. Alright. Well, Cabal Therapy is cool. Okay. Let's Cabal Therapy. I am going to name Sowing Mycospawn, I think. Actually, no, I'm about to wasteland my opponent, so I'd like to name another 3-drop. Despite the fact that this is mathematically less likely to hit, this is one of my opponent's highest EV plays for next turn. Hit. That's pretty good. So, play Wasteland, junk Eldrazi Temple, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for Hogaak. That was a Hogaak from hand. Then Cabal Therapy, target you, sacrifice the Satyr Wayfinder. We will name the Kozilek's command. That card is scarier than the Thought-Knots here. Alright. So I'll pass turn. I have an 8/8 Trampoly Boy in play and a Death Toucher. My Bloodghasts aren't particularly strong. My Grist is not particularly strong. Hopefully the 8/8 Trampler is just good enough. Drawing a removal spell would be really cool. Negative. Bloodghasts don't have haste. Send on in. Opponent goes to 10. Play Misty. Play Bloodghast. And pass. I can grab a Surveil land at end of turn. This Bloodghast, if I still have it in hand, will have haste. And now my opponent can Thought-Knot Seer me and take one of my 2 creatures. They both have haste, which is super relevant. Ugh, this Eldrazi deck is beatable, but like, boy, it's stressful. Oh, it's not Thought-Knot Seer. Sure. So my opponent is just going to get rid of 1 Bloodghast and make some friends. Going to yield to those. I'm at 15. Ooh, there is a follow-up play. Oh, the follow-up play is just the Thought-Knots here. Sure. No, that makes sense. So my opponent's last card is Cavern of Souls. That Glaring Fleshraker did so much damage. I think you take the Vengevine despite the Bloodghast being hardcastable right now. I think this attacking for 4 and threatening to come back is scarier than the Bloodghast coming back when it's only 2. Opponent's got an attack here if they want to take it. Yep. Alright, 11. I believe it is correct to do the Surveil land. Like, I have graveyard synergies here that are relevant. You're a zombie? No, you're an avatar. You're an insect. This creature can't block. This is not triggering a Vengevine or anything. That just goes to graveyard. That is a Bloodghast. So if I play the Bloodghast and attack, then my opponent has to block something. It is possible that I should just leave back the Grist, though, as to not get attacked for 4 by Thought-Knots here. I'm never killing this turn anyway. My opponent being at 1 versus 2 is not super relevant. Ancient Tomb damage is not very relevant right now. Yeah, I think I leave this back to just decrease the chance that I get punked. The post-combat Bloodghast is a rare Bloodghast. Alright, opponent's at 2. I drop a Bloodghast and pass. My opponent does counting the Cavern of Souls in hand, does have mana to just top deck a Devourer of Destiny and take out my Hogaak, which would be pretty bad. A Kozilek's Command is another probably game-winning play here. What is that last card? And a Battle Mage that bounces the Hogaak to hand is worth a lot. Not worth a win, but is worth a lot. So we have to figure out how my opponent is surviving this Hogaak attack. Well, if you've got something, I want to see it before I attack. So I will cast a Cabal Therapy. If my opponent has Kozilek's Command, they cast it in response. Name it. It is a Cavern of Souls. So I believe that means that my opponent is deterministically dead. 4, 5, 6, 7. Hogaak plus one other thing getting through is just lethal. Send it. There's blocks. There's damage. So we win the match, but... ugh. Okay, I don't think my hand is doing anything fundamentally unfair. I am on the draw, so I get another card to improve this hand. As of right now, it's turn 1, Surveil Land, turn 2, Satyr Wayfinder, turn 3, do some Reanimate nonsense. I am unsure if this is good enough. Will it be a deck other than Eldrazi or Black-Red Reanimator? Or sorry, Blue-Black Reanimator. Yes. Will I ever draw that one removal spell that I've never drawn in this entire league? No. No, I will not. I am fine just playing a Gravecrawler this turn. I wonder what we're playing against. It could be like a Bant Nadu deck. It's a Brainstorm. There's the fetch to clear. So we are potentially just going to die to Nadu next turn. There's Trop. Yeah, this is horrifying. I probably try to use this as a removal spell on Sylvan Safekeeper. Let's give that a go. The modes, mill 3, kill a creature. Target player, target creature, bam bam. If my opponent has another land in hand, they can sack like Forest here to protect this and still go Nadu into Shuko in one turn. Okay, they have junked Tropical Island instead. I'll return Misty. Made my land drop. I will attack. My opponent's at 17, and I could just be dead. Yeah, there's the Nadu. Ooh. So the good news is I'm not dead. The bad news is I can't really kill my opponent's stuff. It's like actively profitable for them now. And Nadu is big enough that like my smaller creatures don't attack well anymore. I think I'm going to start by getting information. I'm going to Cabal Therapy. I'm just going to see if there is a Shuko in hand already or something like that that I just need to immediately answer or I die. I think Shuko and Force of Will are reasonable names here. I picked the wrong one. So Springheart, Nantuko, and Force of Will. I guess I will get the forces by sacking the Gravecrawler. I will take the 2 for 1 and get the Force of Wills. Now, I think this is a little weird, but I think I reanimate the Stitcher's Supplier now and try to do something a little more fundamentally unfair. Hey, we have finally seen one after all this time. So, Misty Rainforest lets me return a Bloodghast. Yes. I can cast a Hogaak. I guess it's fine to cast that Gravecrawler first. Get by you. Target Gravecrawler, or rather cast Gravecrawler. Hogaak. Then this leaves better stuff in graveyard. I could have clicked that slightly better than I did. Pass turn. Now I have a reasonable clock in play. My opponent can potentially do some landfall nonsense. Fuck. Okay, my opponent likely wins. This is really boring, so I'm going to skip it. Okay, seems like my opponent has stopped comboing. They have bounced my Hogaak with a Teferi. They've put a bunch of stuff in play. I'm getting hit for 6. My opponent can just continue this as much as they think they need to. And good news, I'm most of the way done with making my thumbnail for this video. So there's not fun stuff in the graveyard. Let's try to put fun stuff into the graveyard. Mill 3. There's a new Gravecrawler. My Reanimate's not doing work. So let's do a Satyr Wayfinder. It resolves. Those aren't great. I guess I'll take the Surveil land. I'll play the Surveil land. Don't need grief right now. I will go... You can't block anyway. I think I'm into this stuff. I'll Hogaak. I'll pass turn. And my opponent can do the whole combo thing again if they would like. I can like technically kill one of these creatures, but like my opponent has so much redundancy here that that doesn't matter. I guess a creature going to my graveyard could matter. Yeah, that's good for my opponent. Okay. Alright, my opponent's gonna start doing this nonsense again. Sure. I'll update you when it's done. Alright, my opponent has stopped. My Hogaak ate a Swords to Plowshares, and then they got bored and decided to start their turn. Alright, we're doing this again. Alright, my opponent has eventually cast a Thassa's Oracle, and I am dead. Enjoyable gameplay experience. So, this interacts with Nadu. This interacts with Nadu. This, I guess, interacts with Nadu as well as the Shuko. This interacts with Shuko and Urza's Saga, so it's probably fine. Looks like I'm going to morph into a little bit more of a mid-range plan. I don't think this, as a Planeswalker body, is just safe versus the small mana dorks and Shukos and Urza's Saga stuff of the world. Despite the fact that it has the word destroy target artifact and enchantment on it, I don't know that I'm interested in it. Have not ever drawn one of these, have only milled one. I think a Wasteland just becomes a Karakas. Witherbloom commands are interesting. They kill some of the mana dorks, but not all of them. It interacts with Shuko. Yeah, I think these need to go. Cuts from here are harder. I think I'm going to assume that my game slows down a lot and do something like this. It's cutting a lot of green cards for the Force of Vigors. I'll still have 17. I could, like, keep that at 18. We did it. Bad news is the hand kind of just sucks. I think I'm going to keep it and hope that the top of my deck is kind to me. Alright, Underground Mortuary, you've got some work to do, bud. Okay. That does represent, like, Karakas. That does represent Wasteland. Represents Wasteland twice. I was probably going to get a mana dork here. Yep. I am going to go ahead and do the Wight of the Reliquary thing. It is the way that I attempt to do something unfair with this hand that is otherwise quite fair. Alright, we're in play. We've got a basic. We've got an Uro. Sure. Karakas also answers that card, so I guess that's fine. Abrupt Decay answers that card. Awkwardly, but it does answer it. So, are we going to get a Swords to Plowshares on my creature here? No. It's that guy. Annoying. My mana's not exactly perfect here. That's not bad. So let's Cabal Therapy and check for the worst case scenario, which is just Nadu coming down and being protected. Force of Will, Brainstorm, Green Sun. Sure. So then I will cast this here Gravecrawler. It's in play. My land enters tapped, which is, like, not great. I have 3 different things that I want to be sacrificing this Gravecrawler for right now. It's awkward. Ball Therapy, target you, sack Gravecrawler. This is attempting to get the Green Sun. My opponent will force that to protect that and get the Nadu. Sacrifice another. This is sacrifice another. So I do technically have Flare of Malice available. It is just a naturally drawn Nadu. My opponent can do Sylvan Safekeeper stuff. I'm hoping they just pass the turn. And then I can Flare of Malice, and that guaranteed gets rid of the Nadu. Ooh. They sacrifice a creature with flying? Yeah. That's a good top deck here. So while Gravecrawler is in the graveyard, I will attack for 3. Yeah. Put my opponent to 14. I do technically have a Reanimate on Nadu. Don't think that is better than casting Gravecrawler, because that opens up Flare of Malice for the next Nadu and leaves open Wight of the Reliquary as well. And I still have Abrupt Decay for Uro if Uro comes back. Alright, there's the green sun. Stack can come back over here. Alright, there it is. So, in theory, I would like to keep my opponent off of this Uro. Getting Wasteland is good for that. Getting Caracas is good for that. I think I am into the land one way or another. I think I'll Wasteland immediately. Satyr Wayfinder. I mean, that's not bad, but Gravecrawler. Sacrifice by junking Gravecrawler. While this is a 3/3, attack with it. My opponent goes to 11. I cast a Gravecrawler so that I can pick up Caracas if my opponent does get Uro in play. And I Wasteland a Trop. I guess we wanted the Bojuka Bog. Don't know exactly what I cut for that. Your Brainstorm is fine. This Wight of the Reliquary stuff is so slow. It seems like it's working here, but I'm going to run out of Wastelands eventually. I think I moved one Wasteland to the board to bring in Caracas. There's a Prismatic Ending. That exiles, which is annoying. Right, and this is another, so I can't just sacrifice this creature to itself here. Caracas or Wasteland. I think Wasteland. I think we're staying on that mana denial path. Like, I can reanimate an opposing Nadu at some point. Maybe not immediately, but I think I just put the squeeze on my opponent's mana. So I do Wasteland, targeting Trop. My opponent will sack it. So they are attempting to give Noble Hierarch Shroud, at which point I will attempt to Abrupt Decay that Noble Hierarch and see if they would like to lose planes. They would not. And then I'll start doing Reanimate, Satyr, Wayfinder nonsense in the not too distant future to break through this game. We're in no danger of dying to a 1/1 Sylvan Safekeeper. We have much more unfair things to do. Oh, multiple Reanimates. I'm going to try to get a little greedy here and pick up a land with Satyr Wayfinder to just do more with my turn. I succeed. Come on, Moto, you can do it, buddy. Play Bayou. Reanimate. Do I want the 3/4? I'm unsure if the 3/4 is better than just looking at a bunch more cards from my deck. I think I'm just going to reanimate a Stitcher's Supplier. Reanimating Stitcher's Supplier lets me recast the Gravecrawler. This gives me 3 looks at like Hogaaks and Bloodghast and stuff, which I didn't hit, but that's okay. There's a Nomads. No attacks. So here is a Cabal Therapy. Let's figure out what's going on over there. So it's not Force of Will. This is probably the scariest thing that my opponent could possibly have, so let's name that first. Ponder Noble Hierarch. Understood. So while I have Stitcher's Supplier, I'm going to cast a Gravecrawler from Graveyard. Cabal Therapy, target you, sacrifice Stitcher's Supplier. I will name Ponder. Oh, we hit. The Noble Hierarch is the remaining card in my opponent's hand. There's now a Bloodghast in Graveyard. I will still Cabal Therapy my opponent, I think. Take out the Noble Hierarch. Don't need to sacrifice either of these. I would be okay trading my Wayfinder for either of those creatures in combat. So I'll bash on in. Alright, and my opponent throws in the towel. We are very much in control of that game. Well, I guess Bojuka Bog access to clearing out Uro matters. What do I cut to get that in? Yeah? That seems reasonable. About the only other thing I can consider is Thoughtseize, since I am now on the draw. Most of the cards that are in here seem kind of relevant. My mana does not work with this hand. I think I just have to auto-mulligan that. Well, I could. Grief, pitch Flare of Malice, take a card from my opponent's hand, evoke trigger on the stack, cast a Flare of Malice, destroy a mana dork, leaving myself with Stitcher Supplier and 2 lands, assuming I put back Wasteland. That is probably better than going to 5. Alternatively, I could not Grief, just play Stitcher Supplier and intend on Flare of Malicing aggressively and keep the Wasteland. That goes down fewer cards. Let's do that. That's a Surveil land, meaning that I am not using Flare of Malice immediately on turn 1. Wow, my opponent chunks the Swords to Plowshares, which I think is a quite good card in this matchup. I am going to restart the game where my opponent does not have that extra land, and I have drawn a card. There are like some single color lands in this deck. There's some Urza Sagas in this deck. Like there is some degree of mana awkwardness, and maybe I can capitalize on that. Yeah, I am interested in that Cabal Therapy, but I don't think I cast it this turn. I think I cast Stitcher Supplier immediately. I'm not sure how I want to use the Stitcher Supplier until, well, there's all 3 Flare of Malices showing up. All right, so my opponent does have their land drops. I have some good defensive tools. It's a little hard for me to use all of them, but the tools are here. Green Sun is happening. It is just a mana dork. I think I am in for Cabal Therapy. I think this is naming Nadu with the first one. Yet. So Brainstorm, Green Sun, Misty left. I can attack for 1 safely, and then sacrifice this to Cabal Therapy. 18. Cabal Therapy, target you, sacrifice Stitcher Supplier. Hogaak is cool. I'll name Green Sun here. Take that out. Leave my opponent with a Brainstorm. I don't have interaction up currently. I can Surveil land, trying to hit like a Bloodghast or a creature that I can cast. I may end up in hardcast Flare of Malice on some creatures territory. All right. Noble Hierarch getting in for punchies. 19. Let's Surveil. Grab the Mortuary. Pick your poison. That's not what I'm looking for right now with 3 removal spells in my hand. That's also not what I'm looking for. I do not believe that I Abrupt Decay the Noble Hierarch. I believe that I passed the turn with Abrupt Decay hard castable and Force of Vigor pitch castable. I really can't afford to bottom out right now. Opponent finds Nadu. There's land drop. So if I draw a land, I can Flare of Malice and get rid of Nadu without giving my opponent a card. So I think I am not going to play Abrupt Decay for mana efficiency. All right, now I probably just Abrupt Decay. This will trigger Nadu. There's an Otawara that my opponent gets. And Nadu has successfully been killed. I don't think I am likely to hit on this Cabal Therapy. I'm going to save this. Because there are some times later where my opponent might reveal something with a Nadu, and I can make the Cabal Therapy into a live card. I am just on a 9-turn clock, so that's perfectly fine. And assuming I can get some sort of graveyard nonsense going, Flare of Malice and Cabal Therapy can start to do some work. Awkward. What's in my opponent's hand? Force of Will, probably? I would like Grief to be a black creature in play for Hogaak. I think I'm just going to Cabal Therapy and name Force of Will. Like Force of Will, Swords to Plowshares makes sense. Okay, I'm wrong. It's Swords to Plowshares. I could convert 3 cards into taking Dryad Arbor and Swords to Plowshares. That doesn't sound great. I think I'll just pass. There's the Windswept. So 1 unknown card. I'll take 2 again. 14. Okay, so here's Stitcher Supplier. This is likely to be pretty good. My opponent might Swords in response to this trigger. They did not. I hit Cabal Therapy. I can just Cabal Therapy, target you, sack the Stitcher Supplier since my opponent did not respond to the trigger, and name the Swords to Plowshare that I already know about. Savannah is the card that's left over. I don't have a reasonable play from here. I'll just pass the turn. About halfway through my deck and have not hit a Bloodghast or Gravecrawler yet. Also haven't hit a 4th land for that matter. I'll always yield to that at this point. Take some damage. And I'm not sure whether or not I'm top decking on average better than my opponent. Feels sort of like no. Alright, they're holding Savannah. Witherbloom Command is awkward as a draw here. Not having this land sucks. But I'm going to take this Nadu out. I have to use 3 cards. Unless I get lucky with Witherbloom Command. I think I have to. It just sucks. Alright, so we see the Savannah that we already know about. Cast this, sacrificing the Grief to take out the Nadu. Now I can Witherbloom Command. I'll mill 3, kill a creature. Mill 3, kill Dryad Arbor. 1 and 2. I will return Karakas, I guess. There's now a Bloodghast. So after all that work trying to get stuff working, I finally hit a Bloodghast. Got Cabal Therapy and Hogaak in the yard as relevant things. I have Karakas. My time is low. My opponent's time is also low. So they are attacking for 1. I am attacking for 2 back. That's fine. I think this, on average, favors me. Reanimate. Sure. So I will reanimate, target some cheap creature like a Stitcher Supplier. Pay 1. Mill 3. There's a Gravecrawler. Cast a Gravecrawler. Cast Hogaak, tapping 1 and 2. Get rid of a bunch of spells and junky lands from my graveyard. So then I bash in for 2. I have a reasonably protected Hogaak. I have the ability to Stitcher Supplier Cabal Therapy at some point if I think there's something that I care about. I don't have Force of Vigor available right now, but my opponent can't top deck both Nadu and the thing to go with it. I've got Uro covered. I think I have finally turned the corner on this game. Yeah, we have gotten the GGs from my opponent. That was a very tough league. We did come out ahead ultimately. So, Wight of the Reliquary. I think I still have mostly negative things to say about it. The engine that it is producing is just so slow relative to the legacy format right now. Like, Riskaminator threatens to Grief Reanimate you on turn 1. It threatens to Entomb, Reanimate or Animate Dead on turn 2. It threatens to Psychic Frog into discard some stuff or just dominate combat while drawing cards on turn 3. Nadu threatens a turn 3 win with Nadu, a turn 2 win with Cephalid Illusionist. Eldrazi threatens incredibly powerful things on turn 3. I don't feel like this deck is streamlined enough to keep up with Legacy right now, with how powerful Legacy is. Our Grief Reanimate starts aren't that good compared to other Grief Reanimate strategies in the format. The idea with Grief Reanimate is that it takes your opponent's 2 best cards and gives you this window, but I don't use that window efficiently since the stuff that I am doing is so slow. Like, Wight of the Reliquary requires your turn 2 play, oftentimes your turn 3 play to play the thing that sacrifices, and then on turn 4 you get to untap and like wasteland your opponent. I just don't think this is fast enough. Grist was okay, just okay. Like, we flipped it a couple of times. It continued to put stuff into my graveyard. I don't know if we triggered this the entire league. Maybe once. So the deck gets passing marks. Maybe it needs another land or 2. 17 is a little rough, but you also just don't really have selection. 17, when you want black, black, green, black, feels rough without crunching the numbers on it. I do not feel like I can fairly evaluate Flare of Malice given how few times I drew it in this entire league. Like, there are going to be a lot of times where you have that plus Stitcher Supplier in your opener, and you just get to throw 6 cards into the graveyard and do some cool Bloodghast things very, very quickly. but that just didn't happen this league. It was a nice thing to have versus Nadu in the final round, like I can say that much. But there's definitely some tension when you want to be Cabal Therapying, Flare of Malicing, and Wight of the Reliquarying. That is a lot of sacrifice stuff. So maybe it is going in too hard on the same stuff. Sideboard felt pretty good. I wasn't always sure what I should be bringing out since like there's a clear core engine, but I liked the things that I had access to. With that, I think I'm going to call it a day. Folks, I hope you enjoyed. Should you need cards, you know where to go. Promo code ThrabenU saves you a little bit on your order. And yeah, have a great rest of the day. See ya.